Welcome to the Leading Generations podcast from Antioch Bible Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri. Each week, Pastor Steve Doss shares an encouraging word on faith, family, or culture as we seek to live out our mission of leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere.
So, come to Christ, which again, I love your story, man, of how God worked in your life, brought you to UMKC for law school, right? But that wasn't why he brought you to UMKC for law school. He brought you so that you would encounter Christ. And man, I love his work in your life. And I love, too, one of the pieces of your story that I love is a Bill and Kath Gray, right? Where they were just kind to you on a Sunday morning and the difference that made. And you coming back and again, didn't talk to him for 5 years, right? But just that touch of being welcoming. I think it's a good challenge for our church. Every Sunday matters because you never know who's sitting around you. And a kind word, a handshake, hey, let me introduce you to some people, what that could mean for somebody's salvation, for their future. It's incredible. So we got to keep moving here, right? But so you're growing in your faith. You and Sydney are married. Tell us. Let's do a couple quick things. Tell us about marriage and kids, and then let's jump back to how did you end up then being on staff at Antioch, right? Yeah. So let's go the kid route first. So you're married now. So what was your actual wedding date?
So October 18th, 2018 is our wedding anniversary. We celebrate. Yeah. Went out. Did a Redwoods thing with the family in July 21st, 22nd. One of those two dates, I always get them flip-flopped in my mind. Yeah. But the 18th is when we got married here. That's our wedding anniversary. And so that was in 2018. And then we had our first daughter, Willow Ray, in 2021. And then our second daughter, Luella May, we had in 2023, Easter weekend. It was just a sweet. They're sweet girls. Yeah. We love them to pieces, and it, I think, has been also one of the most impactful things as I've grown in my understanding of who God is that the way that he wants us to understand him is as a good father. And, when I think about, wrestling with am I good enough? Feeling like I'm a failure, feeling like I'm a discouragement, to have that perspective of being a parent has been a real blessing of, I'd never want my kids to feel that way. Even if they're going through the roughest season of their life and they feel like they're blowing it left and right, I don't want them to ever feel like they can't come to me and that I'm going to push them away. Sure. And Jesus says we're evil parents,
right?
In comparison. And so I think that parenthood in that way has been gift in so many ways, both in understanding who the Lord is and then just in his kindness, the joy and the laughter and all the things that come with being a parent has been a real blessing. But then to come on staff is really early on, as I'm experiencing real victory over sin for the first time, it is something just this fire starts to really burn. I want to tell everybody else about this Jesus. I cannot think of anything else I want to give my life to than telling people, hey, there's real hope of real change. This isn't, parlor tricks. That this is something that's real. And so I felt this real hunger for vocational ministry start to come on pretty quickly after coming to faith and starting to see what Christ had done for me. And I'm still meeting pretty regularly with Pastor Bob at that point and trying to explore that with him. And 1 Timothy's clear. One of the qualifications for a pastor is not a recent convert. But Bob really encouraged that in me. He encouraged me to start taking classes at Midwestern, to start preparing for ministry, even though it wasn't the season to enter ministry yet. Which again is I think really just encouraging. I think the temptation for some would have been, you've just got the new convert, zeal. It's going to taper out, right. Don't give up on law school. I think it would have been easy to have gotten that advice, but by God's grace, Bob was just no, let's explore this. Let's do this. And so wound up leaving law school at the in summer of 2019. They were generous enough to let me take a master's degree with me. And so I started teaching in the meantime. I did my first year teaching at Grandview Christian School. Was an awesome little missionary Christian school it's actually closed since. It's sad to see it closed. Then I moved to Kansas City Public Schools and was at Northeast High School off of Independence Ave in Van Brunt. But that whole time I'm taking classes at seminary. And I think at first, truly it was, I had so much Mormon theology in my head. I'm trying to figure out what the truth is and separate truth from fiction. But this is all kind of happening not in a straight line, this desire for ministry. And so I wind up going the biblical counseling route, thinking that it, just recognizing the impact that one-to-one discipleship had in my life,
Sure.
And thinking that's the thing, is that I wanted to, like, my ideal job description would be counseling pastor somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we're getting close to the end. We're getting close to the end of seminary. I think I'm only a semester or so out. And Marcus tells the church family that he's going to Colorado to plant that church. And I'm thinking, awesome, like really excited for them. I'm teaching high school at the time, but youth ministry wasn't on my radar.
Right.
It was like, and one of the things that even at that point that had rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, and I love some of these guys to pieces. I'm not trying to talk ill of anyone, but around seminary, sometimes you can hear people talk about youth ministry like a stepping stone. Like you get your foot in the door, kind of your first job where you cut your teeth kind of a thing. And that never set too well with me. I'm like, I don't think that's the necessarily the right philosophy for youth ministry. Yeah. And so it didn't really cross my mind, but I started having some friends that had been walking through with Sydney and I for since we started coming to Antioch, are starting like, hey, like, you going to throw your name and, throw your hat in the ring for Marcus's job? And I'm kind of like, no, like, I don't think so. Like, I really want to do counseling. That's where I feel like the Lord has called me. And, but you keep hearing those people in your ear and you start, you start praying about it. And, little did I know, I think you had started to get some of that too, because I think at the time we were talking about maybe some kind of a counseling director, maybe dreaming what that might look like. And I think we were in your office sometime in May of 22, and it was kind of a, I don't know, what do you think kind of a thing. And we were going to go and pray about it. And then just the dominoes started to fall, and went to camp that year, and just really fell in love with working with the teens, realizing that basically everything that I loved about, counseling ministry that the teens really need. I think back on my own experience at how expertly I'd say I was able to really live a double life and be really hypocritical in so many ways, but still put on this face at church, and to think about, like, man, what would it have meant for me at 14 to have really heard the gospel, or to have been in a place where it's not about performance, but like, hey, if you're struggling, like, let's talk about it. We want to help you. We're not here to look down on you. Like, what it would have looked like, to be able to have that, kind of experience I had with Jimmy, but maybe 10 years earlier and with a whole lot less heartache built up along the way.
Yeah.
And so, what I didn't expect was to fall in love with preaching along the way. And so doing kind of that Wednesday night youth service, if you want to call it that, I still don't have a better, I don't like to describe it as the youth service, but I don't have a better descriptor for it still after 3 years. But really just fell in love with preaching and the way that it forces me to be in the Word at a level that, even though I'm a really detailed-oriented person, I tend to like to follow big storyline, and I like to follow kind of the big arcs and the big patterns. But the gift of preaching really forces me to be into the nuts and bolts every week that I'm preaching, and it really is a gift. I consider it to be probably one of the biggest perks of what we do for a living, is to get to be in the Word. And so I start as the student ministry director, which is awesome. lets me focus pretty exclusively on youth ministry, with this idea that Pastor Todd's mentoring me towards pastoral ministry. We had kind of this roughly 2-year mark in our minds. And I come on and I'm thinking, this is great. Super excited, kind of dream job. But what I wasn't expecting was how much maturing God still had for me in a lot of that. Is there was just some pride in my heart that I had to wrestle with, kind of dealing with this. Because for a while there, it felt kind of weird sometimes. You're kind of in this in between. It was the first time we had followed that track as a church family. And then I think in some ways what I was doing visibly, I don't think people saw a whole lot of difference between what I was doing and what Pastor Marcus had been doing. And so there was some pride in my heart that I was really surprised was there, that in so many ways, I think that model of having a long on-ramp was such a blessing to me and in growing me. And really, I don't think I would have said it or been even aware of it at the time. Like, when I'm hiring, coming on staff, like, oh yeah, I'm ready, I've got this kind of a thing. Like, God was really kind to show, like, you still got some growing. You still, by all means, I still have so much growing to do. Like, by no means have I arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but it was really sweet. It was a sweet season to get to do that. And then just practically cause I didn't have, prior experience to draw on. Like I didn't have my own prior youth ministry experience to draw on. Yeah. And so it let me really focus on the students, and then along the way over those 2 years, start to slowly take on more and more of those pastoral responsibilities that maybe aren't as visible, that aren't as seen, but can take up a lot of your day sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a real gift to be able to kind of slowly take those training wheels off, so to speak, than have to do it all at once. And so then I was the student director until December of last year, which would be 2024. And then that first or second Sunday in December, we, the church ordained me to pastoral ministry, and it was a really just sweet evening, and just realizing how, yes, it's a vocation that the church compensates us, but it really is a gift. Like, I can't think of anything else that I'd rather do. Like, I think I've got the best job of any of the 6 of us. Like, I really do. Yeah. I love that. It's just been sweet. Yeah.
So let's work with students right now. Mm-hmm. So now we're up to that moment. You're working with students now for 2-3 years. I always lose track.
3 years in August.
3 years in August. So you've been working in student ministry now for 3 years. I want you to talk about what you see that encourages you about middle school, high school students, and then pivot to a little bit more of the negative side. Yeah. Like, what are the things that concern you? So let's go at that route. Like, what encourages your investing and your leaders are investing in students? What are the encouraging things you're seeing from that age group, and what are the things that discourage you?
I think one of the things that encourages me most is the genuineness of a lot of them. It's always kind of funny whenever you see middle school kids or high school kids and they start getting interested in each other, and there's that. It's kind of cringy to watch, frankly, sometimes.
Sure, no doubt.
While also sweet most of the time, but to see that, how often that starts off with, like, a guy and a girl, hey, you want to do a Bible study together? And the first time I heard that, like, I'm glad I wasn't around the kids. Sure. I think I rolled my eyes real hard. And that just... And that just was one of those things. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. What are we doing? But to see that like wasn't just that one, and I can't even remember who the first little couple, we'll call it, was.
Right, yeah.
But to see that that's been a pattern, that I think something that parents have done really well, that these kids, that as they're trying to figure out, as they're kind of growing into that season of life, that they're wanting the Lord to be a part of that, I think is really encouraging because, you know, I think back on my own experience, you know, playing church so much in high school and in middle school, that idea of like, oh, I'm going to look squeaky clean on the outside. But like, if I was taking a girl on a date, I wasn't thinking, let's go through James. Like, you know, like that was the furthest thing from my mind.
Your headspace wasn't there.
No. And so it encourages me to see some of that, to see that they are wanting, that there's a real hunger there. They're wanting to know their Bibles. They're wanting to know the Lord. They're wanting to honor Him. And that's pretty consistently I'm seeing is that there's this desire. Yeah. I think what kind of, I'd say, discourages me or concerns me the most is I have to say, is I think I think of Revelation 2, the letter to Ephesus, where Jesus says, you've lost your first love. And he goes through the list. They're doing everything right. Their theology, so to speak, is solid. They're guarding against error. They're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. But Jesus's issue with that church is, you've lost your love for me. And I think where I see that most with our teens, or even this family season of life, is whether you want to call it affection for Christ or priorities. It's not that Christ isn't a priority, but I think it's not uncommon for me to see He's not the priority. You know, we have the reason why we have priority lists is so that when we have two good things that come into conflict, we know which one is more important. Right. And so whether that's school or whether that's sports teams, there's a lot of ways I see this lived out. But the bottom line is that even though Christ is a priority, it's really common for me to see, but every time that Jesus is going to come into Jesus or His bride, the church, is going to come into conflict with a sports team or a traveling team or preparing for college or trying to earn money for college, like whatever it is, it seems like Jesus usually loses when those two things are coming into conflict. And and again, I want to be gracious. It's not that there's not a love for Christ. I think that there's just something about this teen season where, because I think we can get it in our heads that it's temporary, right? Yeah. I think we have this idea that Jesus is always going to be there, the church is always going to be there, but I can only play pickleball for 4 years, you know, or I can only play football for 4 years or whatever it is. And so I think as families, we want to encourage our kids, but I think we get it into our heads that, man, like, we've got to prioritize this now because they're not going to be able to do it later. But what our teens are seeing is that, okay, well, if the choice is between going to a club ball on Sunday or going to church, we're always going to choose club ball. Or if it's between being active in church or working to save for college, well, it's going to be college, because I think what it reveals in our hearts is that, you know, we're trusting in that college degree or that college education to provide for our kids. Maybe less so, because, you know, I can say I've never loved getting to talk to older saints, and the older saints that are still at church and still involved, you know, and I'm not trying to harp too hard on this, but, you know, I've never had a conversation with a single older saint that goes, you know, I have no regrets about doing club ball with my kids and being out of church every Sunday. And like, that was great family time or great bonding or whatever. I've never had that conversation, but the one that I've had a lot of is, man, like, my kids want nothing to do with the Lord. Like, they say they believe, but it's challenge getting them to come to church with me on Christmas or Easter, and their kids know almost nothing about the Lord. And so you see this heartbreak in the older saints that it's like, man, if I had only known.
Right.
And it's not coming from a place of, I think, intentional neglect. I think it's coming from a place of we want to love our kids and we want to give them everything that they want. We want to give them all these things that maybe we didn't have. We want them to have a great childhood. And so I think just along the way, though, we can let that love for Jesus be a little eclipsed in that, and get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I think that I like the way you said it, Tim. He is a priority, but he's not the priority. And I think that even talking to the older believers in our church that have been doing this for a long time, it wasn't that Christ wasn't a priority, but he wasn't the priority, right? And I think that's a good word for us to hear from you, and what you see is that, man, we got to make sure that Jesus, his church, is the priority in our family's life. I've recently seen a thing going around on social media, like this is grandparents, parents, kids idea, and it's like grandparents' church was essential, for the parents' church and Jesus became non-essential, and for the children, the church and Jesus will be non-existent, right? It's sort of that slow fade that can happen, and that's what I think you're talking about right there, is that when he just one of a priority that you have along with all these other things, and he's not the center, he's not the priority, there's a really dangerous slope we get on there. And so thanks for that. Call to our church family, a warning to us, just to make sure that we're making Jesus the priority and his church the priority in our life. So if you're going to talk to parents, say, and I am a parent of students, right? And I understand, when I was a student pastor here at Antioch, it's sort of weird because you've never parented teenagers, right? So it's different sitting in this seat now that we're sort of coming to the end in many ways of our parenting teens. We still got a freshman in high school and a senior in high school and college students, but we're in the thick of now the college parenting, high school parenting. If you're going to sit down and talk with a parent, what would be the things that you would encourage me in as a parent, and in turn encourage those parents that are watching this as far as parenting goes, their kids? How would you encourage us?
Absolutely. I'd say in a nutshell, like in so many areas of our lives, I think the best gift that parents can give their teens is for them to have a thriving relationship with Jesus. I was at I want to say I was at a youth pastor conference a little while back, and one of the speakers made a point that's really stuck with me, is that children don't necessarily leave the faith, they leave hypocrisy. And so say that again. Children don't leave the faith, they leave hypocrisy. With this idea being that your kids know what's important to you. Your kids, they've lived with you for a long time. They know what excites you. They know what really has your heart. They know what sets you off. Like they just like your spouse is going to know all the good and all the bad. There's not a whole lot your kids haven't picked up usually on. And so they know if Christ is lip service for you or not. And, they know you're going to blow it. They're not expecting you to be perfect. But that to have a genuine, thriving relationship in Christ for yourself, to grow on Christ being the center of your affections, the one that you're going to be most excited about, is going to be contagious for them. They're going to see, like, this is what's most important to mom and dad. Like, this is who is most important to mom and dad. Or they're going to pick up on if it's an obligation, if you're coming to church out of duty because that's how you were raised and this is just what we do. Not to harp on football fans, but they know how excited you get for the Chiefs, and they know how excited you get to meet with God's people on Sunday. And I'd say that it's, if that's maybe if you're listening right now and that's a moment where you're maybe feeling like maybe I have let those affections, wax cold, I would just want to encourage you in that. Like, it's never too late. Never,
that's good.
like, even if you have a senior in high school, like it's never too late. The ship's never sailed. Even if you have adult children, like there's, by God's grace, you can show them what it looks like to, say, hey, I've maybe let some things get in the way of my relationship with the Lord. And I'm going to fix that for me. And I think when they can see you be genuine in your faith and not just in your affections, but when it's hard, I think that sometimes, in an effort to protect their children, there's things that maybe you walked through and experienced that you're not going to tell them when they're my kid's age, right? You're not going to have some of those conversations with a 4-year-old or even an 8-year-old. But I think one of the most important things when they're getting into those teen years, I think life becomes that, like if we're thinking about a job, right? The whole job training is I do, we do, you do. Mm-hmm. I think there's an element to living life that, when they're younger, you're in that I do, and you're taking care of them and you're protecting them and you're doing life with them. And I think in those teen years, it needs to shift to become some of that we do. Right. And so, you're maybe not shielding them from as much as you would.
That's really good.
So that while you're in that home together, it's a we do. We're going to do this. And I think part of that is you're letting them see the good and the bad. I don't want to say bad, maybe the good and the rough parts of your walk with Christ.
Sure.
Letting them see where you struggle, but you're leaning in, where you have struggled in the past, and being genuine with them. I'd say that would be my biggest encouragement is just your relationship with the Lord being genuine, and let everything else roll from there.
Yeah, I love that, Tim. Thanks for that challenge. I think to have a genuine relationship with the Lord in your own heart and life. So be pursuing the Lord, make him the center of your heart, your affections. That's going to be evident to your teenagers. But then I like even what you said at the end, going to that idea of we do as well, right? So when you're sitting down and having dinner together, it's like, we struggle, right? So last night I had to apologize to my kids because the night before we were playing a game, we were playing a card game, and I messed up or something, and they were all yelling at me, and so I got mad at them. So I did the old, you blow up or you clam up. I clammed up to them for the next 24 hours. I was pretty quiet at home, and so here we are sitting at the table, and it's like I had to apologize to my kids. I had to be genuine in my relationship with the Lord. I had to apologize for sort of giving them the cold shoulder and being quiet and short with after that, because I was mad about the fact that they were mad at me because I'd messed up the game. But then that's coming along with that we do, right? Like as you're being genuine in your walk with the Lord, then it's like this is what I'm struggling with, sharing that, being willing to confess that to them. But then I also like the idea of, you were talking about suffering, or, even when it's difficult, I think, like, again, gathering with God's people is not always an easy thing to do, but it's like, hey, we're going to make it a priority. We do this together. And so being even transparent about those things, like, man, sometimes I don't want to go to my Antioch group. Like, I'd rather stay home on a Sunday night than go to my group, but this is what we do. I think that I like how you worded that. And so thanks for that challenge. All right, man, to finish up our podcast, one of the questions that we like to ask every pastor who comes on is, our mission is leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere. That's what we believe God has called Antioch to do based off his word. And so, and the title of our podcast is Leading Generations. So when you hear that, leading generations, what comes to your mind? What do you think about? How does that drive you? Just give us a little thoughts on the term leading generations.
When I think of leading generations, I really think of this idea of the passing of the baton, trying to have this idea that sometimes, like, I think professionally, leading our student ministry, part of that idea is, how do I want to leave this for the next guy to sit in my chair? And when I think about leading generations, it's not just passing on the faith, which is by far the priority. I don't want to minimize that. Like, it is passing on the faith. But I think more than just passing on the faith, it's calling them up. It's calling them to lead in the church. It's calling them to be able to engage in whatever cultural battles they're going to have to fight when they're in their prime. I think it's really this idea not just of equipping them to be able to drive the car, but getting them ready to give them the keys. That this idea that we're leading generations, we're getting ready, we're making space for these younger believers, these younger leaders to be able to equip them to, trust the keys with that we're wanting them to thrive and run and take the gospel to places that we've never been able to, and to be more effective than we have been able to be, and to see them do better than we were able to do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Tim, thank you for joining us today. It's been good to have you on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story. Again, I'd love hearing your story and how God has worked in your life. I'm so thankful that God led you to Antioch. I'm grateful for the good work that you're doing in our student ministry, the difference that you're making. And I know coming in here on 3 years, we're talking about this the other day, like you're finding your groove a little bit. As students, as all transition in ministry goes, it's been neat to sort of watch that happen where they're getting used to you and now they know you. And so I really feel like our ministry is moving forward in great leaps and bounds. And that's because of your leadership and the team that God has put around you. So thank you for how you're pouring into our students' lives, and going to continue to pray that God will continue to use you here at Antioch. And thankful for Sydney and your kids as well. They're fun. I love seeing them around the church, and so it's great to have them a part of our team as well. So love you, Tim. Thankful to have you here today. Grateful for you.
Absolutely. Love you too, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, thanks for joining us for this part 2 of our Leading Generations podcast. So grateful for you, church family, and thankful for those who are parents of teens, getting your students involved in our student ministry. If you don't, I would encourage you, get them involved. You want it under Tim's leadership because Tim is going to point them to Christ. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.